Hi everybody, it's Richard here again and welcome to another video. Now this one is a spotlight on Dave Edmunds. Dave Edmunds, a guitarist, born in Wales, actually Cardiff in Wales, and he started off in the mid-60s in various bands, one of which was the Human Beings. They released one single, Morning Dew, which was a very psych rock type song from 1967. But the Human Beings more or less morphed into Love Sculpture, and they released two albums. The first one is Blues Helping, which I don't have on physical format, and the second one is this one here, Forms and Feelings. Now these are very sort of blues rock with a little bit of psychedelia in it. This one here in particular has two tracks that are classical pieces which are rocked up. One is Sabre Dance, which is this single here, and that was composed by CAPTION, and this actually got a top 10 hit single for Dave. The second one was Bizet's Farandole, and it wasn't a single, but there's another great song off this called In the Land of the Few, and it is very psyche. These aren't bad albums at all. The first one, as I said, I don't have a physical copy of, but yeah, it's got a really dreamy cover of Summertime, and it also has a version of Shake Your Hips, which is very similar to the Stones version 4 years later on Exile on Main Street. Then in 1970, Dave was producing a band called A Legend by this new group called Shakin' Stevens and the Sunsets, and one of the songs on it was a track called I Hear You Knockin', which Dave then recorded himself under Dave Edmunds' Rockpile, and this actually stormed up to number one on the charts in late 1970 and was the Christmas number one. I think this stayed for 6 weeks in the charts. Really good song, and yeah, Shaky recorded it before him, so that got to number one. This is a different version. I've heard the Shakin' Stevens version. He puts his own take on this, and his voice is like slightly distorted in it as well, but it's really good. Next came the single Blue Monday, which I believe is Fats Domino's song. Very bluesy, did absolutely nothing. And then I'm Coming Home, which I'm not sure who wrote. I think this was actually before Blue Monday, and this is great, but again it did nothing. And those two singles were 1971. In 1972 he released Down Down Down, which is a great little almost status quo type number, same sort of vein as Down the Dust Pipe, and he used this actually to open up the Rockpile concerts in the late 70s. But this is great, but again it failed to chart. In 1972 then he released his first album, which is called Dave Edmunds' Rockpile, and this is a bit of a mixed bag. Down 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 is on it, as is I Hear You Knockin' from a year and a half previous, but the other two singles aren't. There's a version of Outlaw Blues by Bob Dylan, which is not bad. He does his own version of It Ain't Easy that David Bowie recorded for Ziggy Stardust. But the highlight of this, of the non-singles, is The Promised Land, which is a very basic, primitive version of Chuck Berry's song. I'm not too sure. I think this may have been actually recorded in the late 60s and tagged on at the end, but it is really good. And then I have to say he does a very good version of Neil Young's Dance Dance Dance. So it's not a bad album. It's not fantastic, but it's not bad. Then in 1973 he released two singles which were very Phil Spector-y, and they are Baby I Love You, which the Ramones obviously did as well in the late 70s. I don't see the point of it. It's a cover of the Ronettes song and it sounds very similar, very Phil Spector-y. But the other one he did was Born to Be With You, a cover of the Chordette song, and this is brilliant. Both these songs got top 10, and that took him back into the charts in 73. In 74 he featured in the film Stardust with David Essex as the guitarist in the Stray Cats, the drummer being Keith Moon of course. And then 2 more singles came out on that Rockfield album, or that Rockfield label, sorry. One is Need a Shot of Rhythm and Blues, and the other is I Ain't Never. Both failed to chart. So things weren't going too great, and in 1975 he released a second studio album, Subtle as a Flying Mallet. Now this is a real mixed bag. It does have Baby I Love You and Born to Be With You from 2 years previous on it. It's the other 2 singles as well, Shot of Rhythm and Blues and I Ain't Never. And it's also got a version of the Do Ron Ron, which he should have stayed clear of. He does a decent enough version, but there's only one group that can sing it for me, and that is the Crystals. But the important thing in here is there's a song called She's My Baby, which is a half decent song, and it was written by Nick Lowe. Now, Dave in 1975 had produced Nick Lowe's, Brinsley Schwartz's New Favourites Of album, and Nick gave him a song and it started like a partnership, so it was the start of good things to come for Dave Edmunds. Now, Nick was touring with the Stiff group at the time, as was Dave Edmunds, and it was believed that Dave Edmunds was going to sign to Stiff, but for some reason he didn't, and he signed to Led Zeppelin's Swan Song label, which caused a few problems because when they were touring they more or less turned into a group and they were unable to record as that group, which was Rockpile. But the first single to come out of the for the Swan Song label was the Lowe Edmunds penned Here Comes the Weekend, which is a fantastic little rockabilly number, and it was a real good rock and roll number. And the B-side is As Lovers Do, which is slightly country tinged, and it was a song that was originally planned to be on the follow-up Brinsley Schwartz album to New Favourites Of, but never happened. The next one is the Rodgers and Hart song, Where or When. Now I've heard Peggy Lee do this and it's beautiful. This is like a Beach Boys version of it and it's absolutely gorgeous. And the B side of this is called New York's a Lonely Town, which is a non-LP track, and it's very Beach Boysy as well. Absolutely fantastic single. Both did nothing. And then the next one was a cover of the Jim Ford song Juju Man, which is absolutely brilliant, but unfortunately did nothing. But he did get success with I Knew the Bride When She Used to Rock and Roll, the 4th single from the album released called Get It. Now, the I Knew the Bride was a Nick Lowe song, really good number, reminiscent a little bit of Chuck Berry, but it took him into the charts, and whenever you see them in the charts, it's the Rockpile band. Now, this is not, it's from this album, as were those 3 other singles, but this is not fully Rockpile. This is 3/4 Rockpile. You have Nick, you have Dave, you have Terry Williams the drummer, but there's no Billy Bremner in this. This is a fantastic album. This is possibly his best album with songs, the 4 singles I've just said. Get It is a great little doo-wop number. He does a version of Bob Seger's Get Out of Denver and Hank Williams' Hey Good Looking. Really strong album, but as I say, not quite the full Rockpile. Next up, and he releases Tracks on Wax 4, and there was 3 singles taken from this. The Magnificent Deborah, which was co-written with Nick Lowe and is possibly my favourite Dave Edmunds song. A1 on the Jukebox, which was co-written by Dave Edmunds himself, and it's excellent as well. And the third one was Television, which is a Nick Lowe song. Now, Tracks on Wax 4 is the first Rockpile album. It's got the 4 members of the band, and it is a really strong album. Maybe not quite as consistent as Get It, but highlights include those 3 singles. Plus, there's a song called Never Been in Love, which is Nick Lowe stroke Rockpile, and it's a really good song. One called Heart in the City. Now, when Nick Lowe released his Jesus of Cool album, he put on a live version of Heart of the City on it with his vocals. Nick Lowe took that track, took off his vocals, put on his own vocals and released it on this album. So the two came out around the same time, one with Nick's vocals and one with Dave's vocals, and I do actually prefer the Nick Lowe one because it is the true version. And another track off this is called Trouble Boys, which was a single in America, not here, and it was written by Bill Murray, which is really Billy Bremner, the guitarist, and it is fantastic as well. And there's a great video on YouTube seeing the guys do it in the Kenny Everett show. Next up, and we have the album Repeat When Necessary, and there was 3 singles off this, and these were the most successful for Dave. First of all, Girls Talk, which was top 10, the Elvis Costello song. Queen of Hearts, which was top 20, which Just Newton then covered a couple of years later, and this was a huge hit for her, I believe, in America. I think it got to number 2. I love this. And then a cover of Graham Parker's Crawling Through the Wreckage, or Crawling from the Wreckage. Yeah, Repeat When Necessary is probably his most familiar album. It's got those 3 singles on it. The highlight though is a track called Sweet Little Lisa, with fantastic guitar solo from Albert Lee, not Arthur Lee, Albert Lee. And yeah, it's just a really good album. Side 2 is not quite as good as the first side, but yeah, this was actually recorded at the same time as Labour of Lust. Now, they worked on Labour of Lust as Rockpile during the day, and they worked at this during the night. They toured as Rockpile, but they still could not release any albums under Rockpile because Dave was signed to Swan Song and he had to deliver 4 albums before they were able to do so. And in 1980 he actually handed in his new album, which meant that he was now able to record under Rockpile. Now the Swan Song didn't release it until 1981, but it still freed him up, and Rockpile, Seconds of Pleasure came out, and this is not a bad album. It's not as good as what it could have been. I think some of the songs that were picked, especially for Dave Edmunds, were not fantastic, like Knife and Fork and Oh What a Thrill are not brilliant. The best songs off here are the ones that Nick Lowe actually handles, and there is a version of Squeeze's Wrong Way, which was, I think, a bit of a throwaway. Must have been recorded around the Cool for Cat stroke Argy Bargy sessions. Not good enough for Squeeze. It shouldn't be good enough for Rockpile. 2 singles were released from that album, and Wrong Way was one of them. Failed to chart, with Dave on lead, and then the fantastic cover version, Teacher Teacher, with Nick on lead. Also in 1980 he released, along with Carleen Carter, Baby Ride Easy from her Musical Shapes album, which is a great little country number. Then in the end of 1980, the first single from the new album came out, which is Singing the Blues, which is a cover of the Guy Mitchell song. And then the album itself came out, Twangin', and this is the last Rockpile album, and it is pretty good. The highlight of this for me is a track called It's Been So Long, which is an old Ian Gaume song from the Brinsley Schwartz days, and there's 2 more singles taken from that album, and they are The Race Is On, which was with the Stray Cats, which he also produced their first album, and the Rant and Rave album, and a cover version of the Almost Saturday Night, the John Fogerty song. So that was it for Rockpile, and in 1981 they then released Swan Song, a final album, which is the best of Dave Edmunds, and this is slightly different to the US version. This has got 1 extra song on it. This includes Sabre Dance and I Hear You Knockin', whereas the US version doesn't include either of those, but the US version includes a song called Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Bill Murray song, Billy Bremner, which featured on the Repeat When Necessary. This is slightly better, even though the other one is more consistent, as it's got all Swan Song recordings. But this is my intro to Dave Edmunds, really, vinyl wise, and I think this is absolutely magnificent. Deborah, Girls Talk, I Knew the Bride, A1 in the Jukebox, The Race Is On, I Hear You Knockin', Almost Saturday Night, Sabre Dance, Queen of Hearts, Crawling from the Wreckage, Here Comes the Weekend, Trouble Boys, Juju Man, and Singing the Blues. Fantastic album. He then signed to Arista, and this album came out DE 7th in 1982, and there was 3 singles from it. From Small Things Big Things Come, which is an outtake from a Bruce Springsteen song from his River Sessions. Warmed Over Kisses, Leftover Love, which is a real bluegrassy type song. It's a real hoedown. And Me and the Boys, which is a decent enough little rocker. Yeah, it's a good album. There is various styles in it, but there's no Edmunds originals. Other highlights are Louisiana Man, done in a very Cajun style. Some Other Girls, or Other Guys Girls, sorry, and Paul and Meet Jean. Decent album. And then in 1983 he releases Information, and this has got a different US cover which I'll show now. Now this here is 2 songs were produced by Jeff Lynne, but it sounds as if the whole lot of it was produced by Jeff Lynne. 2 singles actually came from this album. One is Slipping Away, written by Jeff Lynne, and the other is Information, only produced by Jeff Lynne. Yeah, a decent album, a bit dated in production. There's one song off this I love called Feels So Right, which sounds like it could have been from the 3rd Traveling Wilburys album. It sounds like a Jeff Lynne production, but it's not. And another one I really do like is The Shape I'm In, which has got a Cajun style to it. Decent, but not fantastic. Slightly better from 1984 is Riff Raff, and this has got a completely different cover in America, which I'll show now. Now this has got 3 Jeff Lynne songs on it: Breaking Out, SOS, and I think the other one is Far Away. But the 2 big tracks off this for me are 2 Paul Brady songs. One is Busted Loose, which is one of my favourite all-time Dave Edmunds songs, even though it does have those sort of synthesised drums, and Steel Claw, which Tina Turner also recorded for her Private Dancer album. Another track I love is Rules of the Game, which was written by John David, which had been a partner. He'd been a partner with Dave Edmunds since the early Love Sculpture days, and had a habit of writing very catchy songs for him. Rules of the Game being one. So yeah, I really do enjoy this album. The 2 singles released from Riff Raff were the old Motown number, Something About You, and Steel Claw. And in 1985 he contributes to the Porky's Revenge soundtrack, and the single off this is High School Nights, which is a pretty good song. But he also contributes a couple other songs in this as well. He does a really good version of Do You Wanna Dance, which is quite reminiscent of Beach Boys, and he also does Queen of the Hop. This is a really good album because it featured George Harrison doing the song I Don't Wanna Do It, the Bob Dylan song. But yeah, really good soundtrack. And in 1987 he releases a live album called I Hear You Rockin', which is decent. It's just a hits live album, which is pretty good. I don't think there was any UK singles off that. And in 1990 he releases Closer to the Flame. I nearly said the Tanita Tikaram album there. Yeah, and this originally came out in '89 with one less track, and I bought it in 1990. The extra track is called Stay With Me Tonight, which is a Dave Edmunds original. Well, it's not really, because it's a complete steal of the Elvis Presley song I Need Your Love Tonight. But it's not a bad album. The single off it was King of Love, which is a really good rockabilly number, and yeah, I loved this at the time, but the album is okay. Then in 1994 the album Plugged In, which is one of his best, I think probably his best since the Rockpile days, and this has got great songs like I Love Music, It Doesn't Really Matter, I Got the Will, Chutes and Ladders, and it does a different version of Sabre Dance in this as well. Absolutely brilliant. And in 1999 he releases the album Hand-Pick Musical Fantasies, but only in in Canada and from his website. I don't have a physical copy, but it's not a bad album. It actually is a part compilation of older songs and a few extra little ditties he puts in. And then in 2000 and something or other, 13 I believe, this comes out, and it is the album Again. Now I do have that on vinyl, and this is good for the fact that this is basically the plugged in album. It's got the whole of that album bar 2 or 3 songs off it, plus a couple of hand-picked musical fantasies, and it's hard to get on vinyl, the plugged in album, so it was really good to have it. But there is a version of Your Song, which is an instrumental, which is not great, but it got a bit of coverage at the time, and so he decided to release an album called On Guitar, Rags and Classics, and this is all instrumental. And this is, I'm not keen on it, to be honest with you. Dave Edmunds does The Shadows, like an instrumental of Wuthering Heights, no thank you. God Only Knows, A Whiter Shade of Pale. It's not dreadful, but it's just so bland. And that is his last release to date, and I believe this is 2015. So yeah, the thing about Dave Edmunds is I do like him, I do like his voice, I love his guitar playing. The only thing I will say is that he should have actually tried to write more songs. That was his downfall. He relied too much on cover versions. And if you want a CD compilation, the best to probably get is this one here, and it's just called Anthology 68 to 1990, and it covers Love Sculpture right up to the Closer to the Flame album. Double CD from Rhino. I don't think it's still in print, but you should be able to get it at a decent price. Okay, so that's my spotlight on Dave Edmunds. I've always been a big Nick Lowe fan. I am a big Dave Edmunds fan as well, but not to the same level. Even though with all those records you'd think it was. But yeah, I still do really enjoy him. And a really good compilation Dave Edmunds is really hard to beat. Okay, that's me for now. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope to have another video quite soon. All the best now. Bye bye.